Oh, dude, that plane's right there too. Watch this plane come in. This plane's gonna dump right here in front of us.
I can hear him.
He's right there off to the right.
You know, I generally consider myself pretty well prepared when I go into the backcountry. I carry appropriate food, shelter, clothing, a way of filtering water, but there's just certain variables that you can't account for, which is why I'll never hike without one of these ever again. I recently had an experience while out hunting that really changed my perspective on being able to communicate with people when I'm in the backcountry. So today's video is a little bit different. I want to share my experience of what happened and why I'll never hike without some type of satellite communicator ever again. All right, so this story begins a couple weeks ago. My friend Austin, aka Soggy Sleeves, if you guys are familiar with my channel, then you know that I fish and spend a lot of time with him outdoors. He invited me to go on his elk hunt. Austin goes on this same elk hunt every year. It's a very difficult hunt. The success rate is about 4%. I kind of grew up hunting, but not really doing big game, mainly like pheasant, that kind of stuff. And I want to get into hunting. Now that I'm done with medical school and residency, I have a little bit more free time and I want to start doing some more of these things that I've missed out on. So Austin invited me to kind of tag along. I was just kind of going, honestly, to be just kind of the buddy to hang out at camp and maybe fish a little bit, support him. If he does harvest an elk, then I'm there to help pack it out. So I was just kind of going along for the experience and to kind of just get a good feel for it. So we made our way up there to the area. We set up camp the first night right at this lake. We've gone to this lake before in the past and fished, and it's a really beautiful area. We set up our camp, got everything kind of squared away. I filtered some water. Austin kind of went out that first night and was just kind of scouting out the area. We did a little fire, made dinner, kind of just, you know, a normal first night. Nothing really out of the ordinary then. We wake up really early the next morning, about 5 o'clock, pack up our camp in the dark. We were carrying everything on our backs during this entire trip. So we had our packs that we loaded up with all of our gear and our tent and everything. We start kind of working our way away from the lake, down into some different tree lines and meadows. We kind of stalk a few elk during the day, following some trails, kind of getting onto a little bit of a scent, but nothing really fresh. We ended up hiking up a ridge and going up a little bit higher to be able to get to some different spots that we could glass from and try to spot some elk. We hiked quite a bit, honestly, that second day. We covered a lot of ground, went up and down, climbed some different elevation. We had to stop and filter water a couple times and trying to find some water sources out there. It was a pretty hot day as well. One thing I noticed is there was a lot of deadfall everywhere that we went. Quite a few old trees and everything that had been dead up there for a while. That second day, we end up sitting up on some different ridges and kind of glassing until the sun goes down. We go back and we set up camp right on top of this ridge so that we could wake up the next morning and Austin could glass and see if he could see any movement first thing in the morning as the sun was coming up, and then we could decide which route we were going to take. So we set up camp on this ridge. It was beautiful. By the time we got camp set up, it was dark. We were pretty tired. Made a quick freeze-dried meal and then tucked in for the night. And I slept like a baby that second night. After walking all day long, you get pretty tired, pretty exhausted, and I went right to sleep. Woke up the next morning a little bit before the sun was coming up, started packing up camp. Austin was glassing, looking to find some elk. He ended up spotting 2 spikes right down off the ridge below us. So we decided we were going to get all of our camp and everything packed up, and we were going to go basically straight down this pretty rough area. It was fairly steep, lots of loose dirt and rocks. I did end up falling a few times going down that, but we made our way down into the bottom, kind of worked into some meadows. We found some fresh tracks. We were kind of going pretty slow and stalking them, making really quiet movements, not hardly talking at all. We were in pretty tall trees and thick brush for most of the day. Our game plan was kind of work our way back towards that lake that we stayed at the first night. Up until this point, I didn't fish at all. The first night we got there a little too late. The second day we just hiked all day long. So our plan was to go back to that lake that we stayed at the first night. We were going to camp there, fish a little bit, and then wake up the next morning and decide where we were gonna go. We were honestly getting pretty close on some of the signs that we were finding as we were tracking these elk. We stopped at a small creek to filter some more water, and it was at that point that I looked down at my Garmin inReach 2. I had it silenced because we were stalking elk and I didn't want it to make any alarms and alert anything that we were close by. So I looked down and I saw that I had some messages, and I'm just gonna go ahead and read those messages to you now. So this was about 2 o'clock. I looked down and I had 3 messages from my wife, and they said, "Treg, emergency about the truck. There's a fire getting close to it. Dispatch just called me asking if you can move it. I gave them the code. If you left the keys in the truck, they could possibly move it. Can't make any promises. If I drive up there, they probably won't let me in. They are evacuating people and are more worried about people than property. Are you close to the fire at all? Please let me know you're safe and okay." So essentially what happened is at that lake that we had camped at the first night, 2 days ago, a fire broke out around noon. All indications were that it was man-made and it started somewhere off the road. Austin and I had parked our trucks at the trailhead for that first lake that we had hiked into. The fire and search and rescue team had seen my truck, looked at the license plate, called my wife. So my wife is at lunch with her friends, and then she gets this phone call. She looks down, it says 911 Park City. So she's instantly panicking, thinking that I've been injured or I'm dead. Usually I say, "Okay, take care, see you in 5 days." This was literally the first trip that I had done with the Garmin Messenger. To be honest, where Austin and I were at in the trees, we had no idea where there was a fire. My response to her said, "I'm not close at all. I had no idea. I'll head straight there." So Austin and I were in such thick trees, we couldn't see really the sky. And honestly, our faces and our heads were down at the ground, looking for signs and going very, very slowly. So we weren't really looking up. So we honestly had no idea that there was a fire, and we were hiking straight back to the lake that was on fire. We would have headed straight into it. And if you look at the area of the fire where that burned, it literally burned all along the trail that we had hiked the second day, and was headed straight to where we were at when we got those messages. I'm sure eventually we would have smelt it or started to notice, but honestly with a forest fire, you never really know how fast it's burning. There, like I said, there was a lot of deadfall in the area. If the winds pick up, then forest fires can really travel pretty quickly. If they burn hot enough, they can even create their own winds, and they can rip through areas really quickly. I guess the fire had started fairly small and then expanded pretty quickly, and so they got pretty concerned about people and property in the area and were evacuating everybody. So Austin and I, who had been tracking these elk all day long, looked at each other and like, we gotta go. So after creeping along stealthily all morning long, all of a sudden we were booking it. And we decided we were gonna hike out to the road so we could hopefully hitch a ride with somebody and get back to the area faster, because we were about roughly 6 miles away at that point from where our vehicles were. So we walk out to the road, and sure enough, we look up at the sky, and all of a sudden, yeah, we can see the smoke plumes. You could smell it on the air, and it's pretty close. It's right there. So we hike out on the road. We come upon a camp that had some horses with some hunters, and they were kind of running around packing things up, and we said, "Hey, we got a call that our vehicles are in the line of fire. We got to go move them. Would you guys, if we help you pick up your camp, would you guys give us a ride out to the road?" And they were super kind. We helped them pick up their camp and get their tent and everything loaded up. They loaded up their horses, and then we jumped in and we headed out towards the main road. Once we get out to the main road, fire and rescue is sitting right there, blocking off the road that takes us up to where our vehicles are. So we get out and we say, "Hey, we got a phone call from dispatch that our vehicles are up there. Like, is there any way that we can get past and go try to get them?" They said, "Everything's on fire up there, both sides of the road. Nobody's getting in at this point." And so we're kind of just like, okay, worst case scenario, your truck burns up. At least at this point, we know we can get out of there, and we're not really in a ton of danger. So we kind of have this decision to make, like, okay, what do we do at this point? Do we stay here? Do we ride out with these guys and then have our wives come get us and then try to come back and get the vehicles later? We ended up staying there. So we rode out a little bit until we had service. We were kind of just hanging out there on the side of the road. Lots of people kind of headed out, evacuating the area. There was even a big old herd of sheep that went past us at one point. And this older gentleman in a Razor pulls up and starts kind of talking to us. He owns some property in the area and was just kind of asking what was going on. We mentioned that our vehicles were still up there and we were just kind of waiting to see if we were going to be able to get them or not. He says, hang on a second. He jumps in his Razor, takes off. So he comes back about 20 minutes later and he's like, all right, boys, get in. We're going to go get your trucks. He's like, I talked to the sheriff. They're going to escort us up there and try to go get your vehicles out. And we're like, okay, sweet. Let's go get it. So we jump in the Razor. We head up with him. We meet up with the sheriff. Sheriff tells us, I don't know if I can get you completely to your vehicles, but I'll try to do my best. But he's like, if we get too close to the flames, then we're going to have to turn around. So we take off up the road in the Razors. We travel along for a little bit until we see our trucks. And at this point, the fire is still about a half mile away from where we are. So luckily, everything was just fine. No damage to the vehicles. We hop out, throw our gear into the trucks real quick. While we're up there, we had a pretty close view of helicopters flying through. Airplanes dumping water. They were scooping up out of the lake, literally right there next to the fire, dumping it on the fire. They had it fairly well controlled at that point. So we loaded up our gear, hopped in the trucks, and we got out of there. Looking back at it, we were never like in any real serious danger. There was a moment from when we got those messages until we made it out to the horse camp that, you know, we didn't know where the fire was, what was going on. We didn't know how fast it was spreading. We didn't know if we were like in the direct path of the fire. We didn't know if we needed to head the opposite direction. Like, we really had no idea what was happening. It's honestly a little heartbreaking to me that my wife had to get that message. And I can only imagine if she got that phone call from 911 dispatch and wasn't able to reach out and contact me and hear from me and know that I was okay. I know she would have just been losing her mind. And Austin and I, you know, we may not even notice that there was the fire and might have set up camp somewhere, and you know what I mean, woken up in the middle of the night and the flames were right on top of us. The fire had grown to about 160 acres over the first night and had spread right in the direction that we were coming in. So I'm sure we would have noticed eventually and got out of there, but we were really able to make smart, quick, effective decisions because we were in contact with my wife and knew what was going on. And the great thing about the Garmin is with certain subscriptions, you can set it so that about every 10 minutes, it will update your location. So when my wife got the call from 911 dispatch, she actually pulled up the map and could see exactly where I was. She could see that I was still moving. She did call the dispatch back and ask them to give her some landmarks so she could see where the fire was compared to the map. And essentially, it was all the places that I had been and where we were going that was on fire at that point. So this experience really changed my perspective about being in the backcountry. You know, I planned for A, B, C, and D. You know, I have all my food. I have appropriate clothing for all different types of weather. I have appropriate shelter. I have protection, all the things that I, you know, try to plan for and account for. And then Mother Nature still has the rest of the alphabet that she can throw at you in that situation. And so forest fire wasn't something that I had on my list for that trip or what I was expecting. But luckily we were, like I said, we were able to make smart, quick decisions and get out of there and evacuate safely. You know, and I have the Garmin inReach Mini 2, which is awesome little communicator. It works really well. It was sending clear messages. There's other brands that do that. I'm not affiliated or tied to any of these. And honestly, your phone's going to be able to do that in a few years. But my suggestion to you is just have some type of way of communicating with people when you're in the backcountry. Be able to hit the SOS button, be able to call for search and rescue, be able to send a message to your loved ones and say, hey, I'm okay, or hey, this is what's going on. Because literally it gives them a lot of peace of mind, gives you a lot of peace of mind, and sometimes it can be the difference between life and death. It really can be. So honestly, I'll never hike again anywhere without having some type of satellite communicator. Even places, sometimes I go fish that I just don't have good service around some of the different parts of Utah where I like to go. This is just something that is gonna really stay with me most of the time so that my wife can always get in contact with me or my family or whatever just in case there's any type of emergencies back home, or to be able to, you know, check in and say, hey, I'm okay, I'm here, I'm at this spot. Really, it's better to be safe than sorry, better to be over-prepared than under-prepared, better to spend a little bit of money and have some type of way of communicating than needing it in that situation and not being able to communicate. For your safety and the safety of your family members, just make sure you're prepared. Anytime that you go in the backcountry, we never know what's going to happen. This is just one example, but there's a lot scarier stories than this. So I'm grateful that I had it. This was literally the first trip that I took it on. And like I said, I'm never going to hike without it again. So I appreciate you guys. I have so much fun sharing these adventures and the beauty of the outdoors and nature with you all. If this is your kind of thing, then please subscribe so that I can continue sharing more of the things that I love with you all. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe out there.